It's no longer a rumor. It's no longer a hot take. Just appears to be an unceremonious end to the Kyler Murray era with the Arizona Cardinals. His season officially done in 2025. What's it mean for K1's future with the organization? It's Bo Brock. Johnny's going to be joining us shortly. It's an emergency podcast for PHNX Cardinals. Attempt on my behalf. But look, we're live nonetheless. It's an emergency podcast here at the PHNX Cardinals. Like and subscribe here to PHNX Sports as we continue our ascent to 50,000 subs here on this humble little fanboy podcast, set of podcasts. Fanboys across the board. What's going on, everybody in the chat? I see the supporter emojis. Those were better PHNX lives than I gave you, but you deserve better. We've got Killer Rex. How about Ryan? I see Dylan Richards, T Boise, Max, everybody, 910. I see everybody in the crowd right now. Make sure you like this video. But look, regardless, it's not loud. Doesn't seem like it's toxic. It just feels like final. As far as the 2025 season, it's the final nail in the coffin as far as Kyler Murray and his ability to build his case for another year. Cardinals quarterback, as we've been reporting for months, that Kyler Murray wasn't going to play another down this season and that things were trending towards an inevitable divorce. This is the next checkpoint as far as that goes. Yesterday, you had a bit of a cryptic, I guess we'll call it, TikTok from the Cardinals franchise quarterback. We'll bring that up here shortly, but also today sat down in my chair at the Cardinals press room looking to get info as far as Marvin Harrison Jr. and his availability this weekend, Walter Nolan, Max Melton, guys who's were kind of on the fence as far as were they going to be able to suit up against the Rams. And then Noah, if you will, Jonathan Gannon provided us this little nugget.
And then Kyler will not play again this year. So he has some more tests done this week. Went out of state, got another opinion on it. It's not progressing where it's going to make sense that he can go. So he's going to be done for the year. So there's the list of injuries. This week, it wasn't, he's, progressing in a way that we wanted. So we went and got a different opinion, some different people, and kind of looked at it, and it's just not right. Disappointed.
Do you expect him to be the quarterback next year?
I'm worried about the Rams right now, honestly, Josh. I just feel bad for the quarterback. You know what I mean? He got hurt and he wasn't healthy enough to play, So, that's first and foremost. That's where I would leave it right now.
But hitting the table after delivering kind of the final blow to Kyler Murray this season. I think Gannon knew kind of the gravity of what he was relaying and what it was going to mean as far as, speculation, as far as this relationship kind of hitting its expiration date, nearing it, and being, incredibly close to it. Arizona Cardinals, after the season, the final whistle blows mercifully on 2025 as they've been, knocked out of the playoffs. The Cardinals will have just about 60 days to make a decision, or not a decision, but to make a move. Kyler Murray is going to have to be off the books before his 2027 contract guarantees kick in. We're going to get Johnny Venerable's thoughts on this. We're going to continue to kind of just break down the situation at hand, what it means in the short term, and then what it means as far as Kyler Murray and this franchise's organization in the long term. We haven't been, hiding from this. This seems to be something that we've been kind of following the tea leaves on, and the writing has been on the wall. But it felt like today was a very kind of unceremonious end to the tenure of Kyler Murray. Let's bring on my co-host Johnny Venerable. He joins us.
Hello,
Johnny, trying to put on his shocked face, but nothing about this is shocking at all, is it?
Yeah, I mean, here's what I'll say. I didn't expect like the finality of it to come this quickly. I think I expected them to drag this out for another month, but you know what? Give them credit. Like they didn't want to probably deal with this for another month. Now this is their own doing. Everybody's kind of played their own part into this, but I think you and I both assume that Gannon was just going to be asked about this on a weekly basis. So, you know, I hate coming on here and saying like, hey, they're lying about foot specialists and all that stuff, but it's just Kyler Murray's going to be healthy this offseason when they trade him, and that was the goal of trying to do this. And we knew that the minute that they decided to go with Jacoby Brissett, that, listen, at the end of the day, this was just inevitable. So it doesn't make it any more disappointing. And it did happen quickly, and he was soft benched, and they've been amicable behind the scenes. Clearly, this is all calculated. So I think if you're an Arizona Cardinal fan, it's another kind of notch on the belt of what is the most disappointing season in 20 plus years. So yeah, they were never going to bring him back, even if they changed their mind, right? Let's just say overnight they were like, we're going to do things differently. This is not, the way we're going to proceed. We need you, Kyler. You're not bringing him back on this team, right, given the circumstances. So Kyler's got, assurances that he's going to be moved or have an opportunity to pick his next team. Jonathan Gannon has assurances that he will be back next year. I mean, you think Jonathan Gannon, if he knew his job was on the line, he'd be like, well, Kyler Murray is just going to be, set out to pasture, for lack of a better. No, everybody knows what's happening behind the scenes.
Yeah. I mean, you would have probably appreciated an organization to have a little bit more foresight of how this was going to play out. But when things are just so volatile and every step you take, they got to, after IRing Kyler Murray a couple weeks back, when was it, on November the 5th, that was just following their win over the Dallas Cowboys. He goes on IR, and then he's got a minimum stint of 4 weeks, and that expired on Sunday after they lost to the Bucs. And Jonathan Gannon's already having to answer questions about that in the post game. And then, of course, following day on Monday, he announces that Kyler's not going to return this week. And I think they understood, like you said, that this was not going away. And probably the best way to get ahead of this, kind of after the fact, but also with a couple more weeks left, is to just kind of end it. Put a stake in this thing for the remainder of the season, and then move forward, because as time, the cliche goes, time heals wounds, but it will heal the perception, I think, of Kyler Murray. I see Donnie in the chat, picking spreads, love him, just posted his his Spotify Wrapped, and we were fortunate enough to be in his top 5. We're a big fan of Donnie. He's a ball knower, resident ball knower. He just said he's heartbroken, and I think that you should be. Like, this is unfortunate. Like, there's a faction in this fan base that is celebrating. I'm not on board with that. I think that's disgraceful. I think that's gross. I think as far as understanding and kind of reading the writing on the wall is another thing. But Kyler Murray was an electric playmaker. Kyler Murray was somebody that it'd be fun to watch him, continue to keep his stranglehold on quarterback one duties. It played out. It kind of run its tenure. And now I think that Monty Ossenfort, Michael Bidwell, Jonathan Gannon, the brain trust, had just had to make the, uncomfortable decision that this is where it's going to end.
Well, and unfortunately, this is just the beginning of the pain if you're a Cardinal fan and pro Kyler Murray, because he's going to have a transaction associated with his name one way or the other come this February, March. Yeah. So we're going to be doing this again when he's inevitably traded and or cut, right? So, and then subsequently has a presser for a new team, and I think that's going to be worse. I think this is unfortunately the appetizer. I mean, like,
The
again,
breakups are always messy. They're
right.
usually always
Stop
messy.
checking socials. Stop
Yeah.
stalking on, Instagram.
Block him for just the foreseeable future. Put him on mute. 'Cause
Here's
it's
what I
not
will
gonna be
say.
pretty.
If Gannon does a presser with Monty at the end of the year, I don't know if Monty will talk. Monty only talks when he has to talk. He's not Jerry Jones. I think you'll get a very vague kind of like, we're open to whatever. Like today, it's clear he was like, I'm going to focus on the next 5 weeks, right? Whereas like in January, I think they'll backtrack it a little bit for optics and for trade posturing, and then people will run with it. But that's where we've been in the end game now for this show has for like 2 months.
Yeah.
So they are doing everything they can to trade him, to keep him healthy. His contract is movable. It's not impossible, but teams are going to try to call the Cardinals bluff. Like, don't get that twisted. They're going to try to say, just cut him. You have to cut him before this guarantee for 2027 kicks in. And we know you're not keeping him on the roster. I would. And again, I think you've been very clear, Bo, and did a nice job at the top of the show saying, like, this is not what we would do necessarily, but this is what they're doing. And that's, you see kind of the vitriol on social media. You mentioned it was gross. Like, I've, tried to stay out of that, but I did take a couple of victory laps this morning because there are so many people that like associate what we report as our opinion, and it's not. And we've heard this for so long, and now you just get people who are very emotional about this, which I understand, but they had made their decision. All parties involved. This has been done for a while. So whether or not they're going to have a problem when they cut or trade Kyler Murray. They are not going to have a player of his caliber or better on the roster when that happens. And they're going to have to live with that reality. But they have come to grips with that. So, Monty's first order of business this offseason will be moving off of Kyler, and his second should be finding another quarterback.
Yeah. And, the latter is about the toughest thing you can do in this sport is pivoting, taking that gigantic, we'll call it leap of faith, that you're going to be able to find, the next, the successor to play the most important position in all of sports, and is going to be able to kind of do it at the level that's necessary for this regime that, according to Benjamin Albright, NFL insider, who's very tapped into what's going on, a playoff mandate in 2026. It seems like it's almost as daunting as it gets in the NFC West, where you've got 3 teams in a playoff spot right now ahead of you. It's a mess. And I want to get back to when this thing does inevitably part ways, it's likely going to be, here's a starting caliber quarterback. I don't think that's deniable, that you just traded, and the trade or whatever the return is going to be a gut punch, just like a lot of this. Because we've talked about it. We had our conversation with Trevor Sikkema. Are you going to have to, with this contract, because the contract, it's not the player, the contract is going to be the biggest hurdle in dealing Kyler Murray. If you can, are you going to have to attach a pick on your behalf to send the other way to get this deal done? It's not, hey, you're going to get, 2 2s for Kyler Murray, or I think it's unlikely you're going to get a 1 for Kyler Murray. You have to hope and pray to the football gods that the quarterback dominoes, and this kind of goes against what you have to do and what you have as far as this offseason, what your number one goal and target should be, finding a quarterback. Hope that the demand is way higher than the supply this offseason in order to keep Kyler Murray's value where it needs to be, to where a team's going to pick up the phone and try to make a trade.
Yeah, I mean, anything less than I think, a couple day 2 picks, the Cardinals are not going to win the court of public opinion immediately. They're going to have to play the long game. And listen, headlines are going to be one thing, but this regime knows that they're going to be on the hot seat in 2026. I mean, most of the fan base has already fired this regime. Kyler Murray fans are not. And I think that that's one thing that if you pro Kyler Murray, if you're anti Kyler Murray, there's unity right now with the fan base that they want everybody fired. So, you're giving away somebody who has won almost 500% of their games for you, having 500 record for the alternative, which Jonathan Gannon, up until the recording of the show, has 2 wins without Kyler Murray in 3 seasons. Like, they're not going to win that immediate return in free agency, pre-draft, right? Maybe post-draft, depending on what quarterback they do or don't get. I think we're at a point where, like, the only time this is going to be remedied is time with how Kyler does with his next team, and then time with how the Arizona Cardinals do with their next quarterback. But I've been consistent with my take on this. Like, Jonathan Gannon is pro Kyler Murray, but this regime believes that the time has come to move off of him. So if that's where they're at, then they must feel like this offseason they can put a plan in place to at least get steady play there that's going to allow them to be competitive in the NFC West. Now, you can laugh at that. I think a lot of us have huge reservations that can happen given the division. But you also, if you're the Cardinals, have to be okay, and clearly they are, with him going and having success elsewhere. With him, and I think that's why they would like to be able to pick his next destination, frankly.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I see Jonathan Gannon kind of being becoming public enemy number one as far as, at the forefront of this organization and its downfall in 2025. And when, he makes the announcement today and we're putting it out there, just reporting the news, people are, going after JG, where I think it's a lot of truth in what you're saying, where Gannon is pro Kyler Murray. Like, they have a great relationship. And I think if you were to look at this and how it's played out, like, if there was an opportunity for Jonathan Gannon to get the green light to redeploy Kyler Murray, he probably would have done it. But as far as, like, there's so many conversations here about just the current state of the franchise, the coaching staff, and decisions. Like, Jonathan Gannon, like, the thing he has full autonomy on is coaching staff. As far as the roster, it belongs to Monty Austinford.
Right.
Monty Austinford's making the decisions. If you have a quarterback that's got this contract and these guarantees, and he's an asset, and you're making the decision that you're going to trade him, he's going to handcuff Jonathan Gannon's ability to redeploy him out there. So I think that's a big part of this. Gannon taking a lot of flack for this, and it's a brain trust. It's the 3 decision makers, and Gannon right now, he's up there. He's about to face the firing squad. The governor's making the call right now to save him, but it doesn't completely take him off death row as far as this goes, for lack of a better analogy.
They're going to have changes to staff, and that's inevitable when you win 3 or 4 or 5 games. And the Cardinals are going to dramatically have a different approach offensively next year.
Yeah.
And again, that may not mean much to people who are ready for a clean slate. Like, I think that's going to be probably the toughest part for a lot of folks, is like, well, if Kyler Murray is ousted out of town, and I'm not even sure Kyler is going to view it that way, but I know that's the perception of a lot of the fans. If Kyler Murray is ousted out of Arizona, why does Jonathan Gannon, why are Monty Austinford allowed to stay here? And I think it's coming from the mindset. And again, this is not our opinion. This is just fact. Michael Bidwell entrusted them into a role in 2023, and they believe that the job is not done, clearly, and they want to be able to see that vision through. And why I think Jonathan Gannon, his goal was to make it work with Kyler Murray. That goal failed inevitably, right? That they did not succeed with that goal. So they're going to allow them to have a second act here. Now, that second act could last a season. Could last half a season. And I think Monty Austinford and Jonathan Gannon are capable people. But like, we've seen it with Chris Ballard in an AFC South division that's dog water, go year after year after year trying to find a quarterback, right? Phillip Rivers and Carson Wentz, right? Anthony Richardson and Daniel Jones and Gardner Minshew. Like, you can have really good personnel people in a bad division, still every offseason be behind the 8 ball trying to get a quarterback. So I am not naive to this, to the notion that, hey, they could be making a huge mistake here. Of course they could be making a huge mistake.
Yeah, bad day for the Johnny V haters out there. Because
I don't care about that.
It's a bad day because you were right, they were wrong. Apparently, some of them coming into the chat today, they don't like what they're hearing, and that's, what,
it's not my decision.
I know. I understand. I'm just trying to break it down for those numbskulls out there. It's too thick to get into their mind what's going on. It's not hey, Johnny's just drawing up how he sees it. I mean, this is what's been going on. And if you can check the receipts going back to when this injury first occurred and 2 weeks after the injury had played out, and there were games against the Colts and the Packers, and then information came available. We basically said Kyler Murray's not coming back. And this would do you need any more information outside of today? I don't think so. You know, it's everything's kind of playing out, everything's coming to fruition, and it's not something that we want to spike the football on. It's really unfortunate because Kyler Murray came into this organization in 2019 that was a rudderless ship, and that's saying something for what we've figured out about Steve Keim post Bruce Arians, that this guy was incapable of being the architect of a successful football team. This is a guy that would never embrace a rebuild. He pivoted off a first-round quarterback to select Kyler Murray, 1-1, a team that was one of the worst rosters of a decade in 2018. Kyler takes that team, gets 5 wins. The next season, they're knocking on the door for a playoff appearance. They win 8 games. And then the following season, Kyler Murray looks like an MVP. They win 11 games, and then the rest is kind of history. Then you've got an ugly display, public negotiation for a new contract.
Yeah.
Which, is basically right in line with every quarterback. This isn't anything Kyler Murray was doing ahead of schedule or out of line. He and his representation saw, the organization. They knew who they were dealing with, and they saw that they won 11 games and Kyler Murray played at the level he did. That was the time to strike as far as the deal. He gets that deal and becomes even more polarizing than before. ACL injury. You got to blow out Cliff Kingsbury. You got to bring in a new coaching regime, front office, and Kyler Murray all at the same time is rehabbing his knee. He's doing he's in the facility, early. He's the last one. He's first one in, last one out, doing everything within his power to get back. He gets back. He has an electric performance against the Falcons in week 10. And then, we see the end of that season, Kyler Murray nearly goes 500 with one of the worst rosters in the league. And we thought, I can't believe what we're going to finally see. The infrastructure from a play calling and playmaking standpoint, an offensive line, we're finally going to see Kyler Murray, that untapped potential, realized. And then we just kind of, since then, since the kickoff of the 2024 season through week 5, it was just pretty pedestrian. And, you can look into all the variables that play into that. I think play calling is a big part of that. But, it reaching, 7 seasons worth, I think you have to just say, hey, we've given it a chance. We've given it a really solid chance through 2 regimes. We've tried to empower and embolden this guy, and the results still aren't there. I think it would just benefit both sides to move on.
Yeah, and we're not naive to the fact a lot of people became Cardinal fans while Kyler was playing here, and maybe, rooted for the franchise for the first time. So this is especially difficult, and I can understand and sympathize with that. And the fact that I've always called him, and he is the best homegrown quarterback they've ever had, and he gave them stability at the position. And so my vantage point is one that, if you ask me, I would keep Kyler Murray in 2026. I don't know how they're going to be able to tightrope this, but that's not what they're going to do. And then when that became evident that was not the plan, and we reported on it, it's just like this is not us coming onto the show every day and saying this is the opinion of Johnny and Bo. Yeah. And we're just going to hope and pray that we're correct. No, we've had this for 2 months. Yeah. And now that it's transpiring, it doesn't make it any less difficult for people, including us, because there's a chance that they're going to have a downgrade at the position. I was asking last January for something that's going to happen this January, and a restructure of the offensive staff. Just get somebody closer to what you did with Cliff to allow Kyler Murray to flourish while having the leadership of Jonathan Gannon. They didn't do that. They have misplayed most of their offensive infrastructure this year. Mm-hmm. Drew, the Marv dynamic, Kyler, Clayton Adams, Jonathan Gannon. It's just unfortunate. No one's sitting here and saying we projected this and we're manifesting this and it happened. No, it's just, was it easy to see? If I was just watching this from afar, Was it obvious what was happening? In my opinion, it was. For a lot of people, unfortunately, it was not. And they thought he was going to return this year. Like, they're going to bottom out. At most, they're winning 4 games. They're going to have a new quarterback. They're going to have new offensive coaches. And then Jonathan Gannon's got to win next year. That's where it's at. But, like, I do think that there will be times in the offseason where they're going to be like, what are we going to do? Where are the options? So that's why Monty Ossenfort is getting a 4th year. So he can go into that, guns a-blazing, whether it's trading up for Fernando Mendoza or Dante Moore. But again, like, winning 9 or 10 games with those guys, like, how is it going to happen? So when we come on the show and we're like, trade for Jalen Hurts or do extreme things, we're coming from a place of like, that's what they're going to have to try to fix this in an offseason. That doesn't mean that we believe that's the best way to team build. Like, the best way to team build is to get fresh eyes and a new quarterback and not force the issue. But that's not what they're going to do. Right. So it is what it is. This is not Bo and Johnny running the Cardinals.
There isn't a quarterback, at least as far as the veteran market, that isn't going to come with red flags. I guarantee every name we mention, and this is just how it's going to go, because if they were good and they were kind of just universally agreed upon that they're a good quarterback in this league, they're usually under contract making big bucks. So when you bring up like potential successors that have played in the league, you're going to get probably like 7 out of 10 people saying that guy sucks. And it's just like that was the case with Daniel Jones, who the Cardinals were interested in, by the way. That was a report from this podcast back in the Super Bowl when we got, wind of that. They were interested in DJ. They were interested in DJ back when he was released by the Giants.
Yeah.
And then, like when you see Sam Darnold, like we were down on Sam Darnold. We thought he was fool's gold with KOC, and then he was able to continue his resurgence with Clint Kubiak and Mike McDonald in Seattle. Like, you're going to have to probably take a chance there if it's the veteran market. I think the one that really will be given like the true grace and the benefit of the doubt is drafting a quarterback. And when you look at how it's kind of lining up, there aren't a whole lot of prospects that are going to, you're going to be able to bring in, and you can, confidently say, hey, this is a guy that's an NFL caliber signal caller, and he just needs, the ability to develop. I think there's 2 of those in this draft as it stands right now, in Mendoza and Moore. And then everything outside of that is going to be considered a bit of a polarizing prospect.
Yeah. It's going to take a Herculean effort. I'm going to let Bo handle these super chats. We're back today.
Let me ask you one thing. I know you got to run. The TikTok. The TikTok happened about 18 hours ago. Kyler Murray, there it is. Weird year. And then the caption was never again.
I think that's just him acknowledging like, hey, this was kind of a year that nobody expected. Everything's good. Look, he's not throwing shade in here. I think it speaks to what we talked about. Hey, it was a bad year. It was a weird year. I'm not putting blame on the Cardinals. At no point he could have done, if this was really Kyler versus the Cardinals, he'd be posting cryptic stuff that was like directly like throwing shade at the team. Guess what? He's not doing that. Weird year, guy. Weird. This is weird. Trade me to, a team I'd want to go to. Cut me and I can go pick my team. Yeah. That's what that is. That's just Kyler Murray's smart guy. Everybody, this is a business. They're playing the game. Kyler Murray's been a consummate teammate during this process. He's been posting, saying all the right things, publicly, privately. They're not going to torpedo this with 5 weeks to go.
Right.
No chance. Now, where this could get ugly is if the Cardinals have a package in place to send him to, let's say, the New York Jets, and he don't want to play there, and then we could see, that's a conversation for another day. But we'll see. We'll see.
All right, man. Great stuff from Johnny joining us on the Emergency Podcast live at 4:30. More on the news today. Let's get to your super chats. Bye, Johnny. Let's get to the super chats here. Noah, if we could. Baharo, when Deshaun Watson struggled in Cleveland, I had my doubts about Kyler and Drew Petzing. And look, Baharo was talking about a person who's been, kind of vindicated as far as what invalidated what he's been saying in the chat. I want to say for 2 years, maybe, and that might be discounted. I mean, he's been a very huge skeptic as far as Drew Petzing and his ability to come from Cleveland Browns quarterbacks coach to Cardinals primary play caller, and that being successful. So I'll give Bajaro his flowers, and we'll see. I mean, Deshaun Watson and both Kyler Murray probably going to get an opportunity to play elsewhere from their respective organizations next season. So we'll see, like, if they can regain some traction as far as their NFL careers. Watson went. I know he suffered an injury and he had the off the field lawsuit that made him. Some teams don't want to touch him with a 10-foot pole, and I understand that. But he had the injuries, but he was a guy that led the league in passing yards. This was a guy that was fully capable and considered, a top 10 quarterback who goes to Cleveland, as one often does, and their career just goes down the tank. So we'll see what happens with Watson. Still a lot of guaranteed money left on that deal, but they appear either destined to draft a quarterback or continue to develop the young guys that they have in that room. So I got you, Bajaro. JG loves K1. Absolutely. Just no clue how to build an offense for him. And I think that's fair. That's fair. I think Gannon has a lot of respect for Drew Petzing, and is loyal maybe to a fault, and he's given Drew nearly full autonomy as far as this offense, because JG being a defensive guy and a lot of unproven coaches on that offensive staff. So like when Drew struggles, like who does he turn to? So that's just been one of those things where this offense has sputtered, has festered, and could be the demise. It's been the demise of what they thought was a franchise quarterback, and now could be the demise of the entire coaching staff, shortly after the 2025 season. Keeping it going here. How about Shane Lame? It's been real active in the chat. We appreciate your super chats. What could possibly make them choose DP over K1? It makes no sense. You put Ben Johnson with them and they're in the playoffs, or a head coach like McVay or Kyle Shanahan. I mean, I think one thing, I think that's fair, no doubt about it. I don't know if they necessarily chose Petzing over Kyler. I mean, they certainly chose to ride with Petzing and thought he was the right fit for Kyler until it wasn't. But as far as like, did they choose Petzing over Kyler post-injury? I don't think that's necessarily true. I think there's probably going to be more information as far as that. As far as like McVay, Kyle Shanahan, Ben Johnson, like those are like the top, three offensive minds in the league. You want to find those. It's just tough to find those guys, and you need to be able to find one in order to find consistent success on that side of the football. But appreciate that, Shane. Is that it? Here we go. How about F Simple, $10? Been a fan since before Bidwell assumed ownership. Michael Bidwell never fired a coach because of poor quarterback play. I knew JG and Monty were safe. He hasn't. We haven't seen guys coach blown out mid-season either, or very rarely have we. And it feels like they've got the blessing from ownership to continue on here, move forward. They've got a Herculean effort in front of them, a true uphill climb as far as trying to dig this thing out of where it's gone in the 2025 season. So I understand the skepticism across the fan base, but that's a good point there. How about Shane Lame's back? JV, since it's now settled, you can tell us what happened. I'm pretty sure K1 telling DP is trash. We all have eyes. I don't think it was like that dramatic. I don't think there was like a confrontation between quarterback and play caller. But I think we got to get to the finish line of the season and then also get some things kind of settled as far as early this offseason before, things can start being talked about, that relationship. Shane Lane, maybe stop hiring rookie experimental coaches. That's a big thing. Unproven head coach, unproven staff, unproven front office. There's just a lot that you're putting on the plate of guys doing it for the first time. Sure, like they came in with the experience collectively with, holding different positions across the league and You like that JG had confidence and conviction in these guys that he brought in, but maybe it was a bit naive to think, hey, these guys without, having experienced much of it from top coordinator positions, that they were going to be able to, when they faced adversity and things went wrong, that they could pull themselves out of that nosedive. That's proven to be incorrect. So having kind of the mentorship or just a wise, coordinator or just coaches on this staff, it's been a big issue as far as this team. Like, all you've got is Jeff Rodgers. Jeff Rodgers is the most tenured coach on that staff. He's special teams. And I think he's still trying to deal with, all the changes that have been made NFL league wide. And the Cardinals have struggled in that area. So I don't know how much you can rely upon, Rodgers to help you dig out of a tough time offensively or defensively. Great stuff from all our friends with the super chats. But we've got an entire show's worth of time to talk about what happened today, the news out of the facility from Jonathan Gannon's just putting Kyler Murray on the shelf for the remainder of their season, and pretty much putting the final nail in the coffin as far as Kyler Murray and his Arizona Cardinals tenure. Talking Kyler Murray's future. We're talking future of the quarterback position for the Arizona Cardinals, and so much more. The unceremonious end to the K1 era. You can bet we're going to be discussing it at 4:30, plus updates on who's available to play this weekend against the Rams. No Marvin. What's the latest on Trey Benson, Walter Nolan? We're giving you all those updates. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to PHNX Sports. For Johnny and Noah, I'm Bo. Talk to you guys at 4:30.
We all silly like the mayor.